Hello, good morning, happy Monday. I'm Patty Kay, and this is the U-Shaped Business Show. And today, our topic is all about taking action, especially on that big project that you've been putting off. Which is quite possibly the thing that I'm absolutely the least qualified to speak about. Then again, on the other hand, perhaps I am the most qualified, especially if you are similar to me. So one of the things that I've noticed is there seems to be two types of approaches to work, people in the world, however you want to call it. It's definitely a difference that I've noticed within my clients, that there are two specific approaches to specific groups of people. And I call them doers and thinkers. Doers are kind of what they sound like. They are the action takers. Doers are the kinds of people who have a to-do list with things on it and they get it done. They're in action. They're in motion. It's not hard to get doers to get out there and make stuff happen. Thinkers, on the other hand, tend to come up with new ideas. They want to spend some time planning and some time learning. They're wanting to line up all of their ducks in a row, that kind of a thing. They prefer to spend time thinking. They prefer to spend time coming up with new ideas or plans and less time on the implementation kind of things. Now, the thing is, I believe that we are drawn one way or the other. We're either naturally doers and we're just anxious to get on with stuff, or we're more laid back, analytical, let's think about this some more kinds of people. And in order to be effective, you actually need to do both of those things. People who focus too much on doing tend to run into things like random acts of marketing. They keep doing stuff even though it's not working. They're busy instead of being actually productive. But they're doing a lot of stuff, but it's not actually getting them where they want to go. So too much time doing, not enough time thinking or planning, or maybe even learning how to do what they're doing effectively. So too much doing can be a problem. Too much thinking can also be a problem. Too much thinking is the realm of analysis paralysis. It's constantly making plans, never executing on them. It's constantly coming up with new ideas, chasing shiny objects, that kind of thing. And if you happen to be a person who falls more into the thinking, reflective kind of side, you're in good company. Hello, I'm Patty, and I too am somebody who tends to think rather than do, which is good in some ways. I do my absolute best work with clients who happen to be doers. So we're opposite, and it works really well. I can brainstorm ideas with them. Like, let's say they want to develop a course or something. We can come up with a bunch of ideas for what courses they could offer, what could go into it. They can pick one. Then we can figure out exactly what needs to be done, organize the modules and what's going to happen, put it all together, and then they can leave with a plan and then use their natural doer energy to start on module 1 and get stuff done. Works just great. We come up with a plan, they go off and do it. Me, because that's my strength, coming up with plans, I tend to come up with a lot of plans, a lot of new ideas. And to use a really good example is my book. My book. I finally wrote my book. My book has been started off as an idea in 2009, which is, if you do the math, 9 years ago. I first had the idea of doing a book. Within that time frame, it was probably on my active project list for a good 3 years. I've had a lot of false starts with it. A lot of trouble going from having an idea to actually getting it done. And over the course of time, I came up with different ideas for the book. I rearranged the chapters. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to write a how-to book. Maybe I should make it like more of a memoir and a collection of stories. Or I know I should create a picture book for adults. So a lot of time kind of figuring out what it's going to be and how it might work, and not a lot of time actually writing the words that need to go into a book, the doing. I did it. I finally finished the book. I did about 80% of the work in the first 2 months of this year. I finally just sat down and actually did it. So based on my experience with that and some other big projects, it's like when I look back over my life, I've accomplished some big projects, and it's like, okay, how did I do that? So I'm going to share 3 tips for getting started in case you can relate to how I am, where you have lots of really big ideas, but in order to have them actually come out in the world, you need to settle down and do the work for it. And before I do that, I just want to stress that if you happen to be a doer, and there's a good chance that you're not, if you're a doer, you're probably out there doing things. But if you happen to be a doer, really action oriented, and you're feeling a little bit stuck, or what you're doing isn't working for you, this advice I'm about to give is really no good, very bad advice for you. Please do not follow it. If you're a doer and what you're doing isn't working, stop and plan. You probably need to do a little bit more thinking before you continue on. You might need to get some advice and perspective. Maybe you need to learn something new in order to have what you're doing actually work effectively for you. If this happens to be you, hit me up for a free consultation. Maybe I can help you with that. However, if you don't relate to being a doer, and if you are here maybe delaying action on something by watching me, I have 3 tips for you that really help me, and they can very much perhaps help you. Number 1, start anywhere. I have a sign above my desk that I wrote in January to remind me about the book, and it says start anywhere. It all needs to get done eventually. This is the it's okay to eat dessert first advice. A lot of times we get this idea, especially if you're a planner and you put things into order and you have a book outline and there's chapters 1 through 10. We think that we need to start on chapter 1. And so I'd sit down to write chapter 1 and I go like, no, I don't want to write chapter 1. I don't feel like it. And then my mind would go where it wants to go, which is maybe chapter 1 needs to come at the end. Or maybe I don't need chapter 1, or maybe I need to reorganize the table of contents entirely, or maybe I should be writing a totally different book. Or, oh, look, there's a book I can read on how to market your book, or there's a course I can take on how to use Scrivener. I'm going to do that first. Anything to avoid actually writing the book. But what really happened, what really got things moving for me in terms of moving forward, was just to start anywhere. And if I didn't feel like writing chapter 1, then maybe I would write the story. And I didn't even know where a story would go, but I really knew that I wanted to tell that story about that time that guy gave me that feedback on my cartoons. And then I would write that because that's what I felt like writing. And the thing is, all those things add up and you can reorganize them later, but start anywhere. Start with what's easy. What's really important is that you get into action and you get going with something. So start anywhere, even with something that's easy. I have a tendency to kind of want to leave the easy tasks till the end, kind of like, they're the dessert or whatever. And it's like, no, sometimes you start with the dessert and then you can tuck into the veggies. So that's tip number 1, is to start anywhere. Just get something happening. Tip number 2 is something I learned when I was a programmer. And this is me using some of the counseling training I've had, where it's like, gee, Patty, when in the past have you actually taken on a big project and completed it? And I thought back to my programming projects and what I did. I spent 9 months writing one programming project. Like every day I was doing that detail level implementation work that is not my favorite, but I managed to do it and get into really nice flow with what I was doing. And what I found worked for me is to leave something unfinished. So a big computer program is made up of hundreds of discrete little modules. And each module has a number of steps that you have to go through. And I used to believe that if I completed all of them, that would be good. But instead, what I discovered is that if I leave the last couple, if I leave it unfinished, then the next morning I know exactly what to do. And so then I would go in, I would complete the things that were kind of an open loop. I knew exactly where to go in. It was easy, kind of warmed me up into my day, and yay, I could check a win off because I could say, yes, that thing is completed. And then I would have my very best time of the day to start something new, which is a little bit harder, but I was already in motion. And the same thing worked with my book. I would start the day by pulling up something I'd written previously and tweak it and edit it. And you know what? They say that you should never write a draft, and you should never write a draft. Write the draft first, then do the editing second. That you should never combine the two. And I ignored that advice, and that's what worked for me, is leaving it unfinished, picking something up and tweaking it. It was just easier for me to work with something that was already there than stare at a blank page. So that's what I did, because start anywhere. The work will be done eventually. It all needs to be done. So I broke the rules, which is my next piece of advice, which is to ignore the advice, even mine. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. And the thing about productivity advice, how to get stuff done, how to take action, tends to be advice for doers, written by doers. And it's good advice for them. Things like determine what's the number one priority and do that first. If you're a doer, that's golden advice, because if you're just doing stuff that doesn't lead to where you want to go, you end up with, not using your time effectively. It's really easy to get lost in doing things that don't really matter. So doing your most productive thing first makes a lot of sense if you're a doer. However, if you tend to be more of a reflector, a thinker, you're better that the most important thing is often the scariest thing or the biggest thing or the most challenging thing, and it can really contribute to your paralysis to not move forward with it. So ignore that kind of advice and just do what works for you. For me, it involves starting with easy tasks instead of doing the most important thing. So whatever it is, listen to some advice, try it. If it works for you, continue to do more of it, and if it doesn't, then toss it out. This is one of the things about having a U-shaped business. It's about being a unique human being, is that you need to find your way to do stuff. So that is my message for you this morning about getting things done, taking on those big projects. Start anywhere. Start anywhere. It all needs to be done eventually. And I can tell you too that it feels really good to get started, really good to get a little bit of momentum. If you leave it unfinished, you have an easy place to jump in next time you pick up that big project. And finally, ignore all the advice, even mine. If it doesn't fit for you, don't do it. Find what works for you. Have a fantastic day. I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.